They didn't expect me. I wasn't on the guest list, wasn't in the family group text, the Christmas newsletters, or the slideshow they rehearsed on Wednesday. My name had been quietly erased, and honestly, they thought I'd stay gone. But people always underestimate what unfinished business feels like to someone trained to wait. The wedding invitation never arrived, but Aunt Maggie Jo, bless her gossipy soul, left me a voicemail. Cryptic as ever, "Rachel!" she said, voice warbling with static and nicotine. "You should know. They're rewriting the family. Starts Saturday." That was it. No context, no apology, just a warning hidden inside Southern drawl and old guilt. Austin in October wasn't how I remembered it. It was glossier now. Every street polished, trimmed, curated like a lifestyle magazine spread. The venue, an opulent vineyard outside dripping springs, reeked of imported roses and money that came fast. The Whitford Foundation knew how to dress up legacy in lavender and oak. I arrived alone in a black tailored dress and boots that had walked more Middle East terrain than this gravel lot ever would. Marco offered to come with me. I told him no. This wasn't about backup, this was recon. The valet barely looked at me. His eyes hesitated over my name, Rachel Walker, before waving vaguely toward a tent marked Family Overflow. Not the main hall, not even the side. They parked me behind a floral arch and a fake eucalyptus wall. Strategic, symbolic, dismissive. Table 19. I walked in slow, every step deliberate. I saw the way shoulders shifted, the way conversations choked for half a breath when they realized I had shown up. Not a ghost, not a rumor, just me. Back in the room, they thought I'd never walk through again. Linda caught my eye from across the tent. A silent nod. Her dress was off-brand pastel wrong for her sharp mind and law firm posture. She didn't wave, didn't smile. Just acknowledged me like a courtroom witness. Present, unwelcome, unyielding. Then Jessica Jason's new wife, the PR princess, glided up to the microphone. Her dress shimmered like a curated Instagram reel. Radiant, tight smile voice, sugar sweet. "We just want to take a moment," she said, "to honor those who served this country. Especially our own special guest, Rachel Walker, the family's very own glorified gate guard." Laughter, loud, controlled, rehearsed. Some clapped, some winced. Jason didn't even look up. His hand was trapped in hers, like a prisoner of presentation. I didn't flinch. I'd heard worse in uniform. I simply watched her the same way I used to watch hostile witnesses, calm, silent, calculating. That line wasn't improvised. It was loaded, sanctioned, delivered on a stage built with family money and selective memory. Gerald, the man who married my mother after my father's funeral, laughed the hardest. His silver cufflinks caught the chandelier light as he tipped back his wine. That smug familiarity that only comes from knowing you still hold the keys. The hush after the laughter was worse than the insult. It was what they didn't say that screamed. Then came the cane, a quiet tap against the wooden floor. Colonel Vincent Brooks rose from 2 tables away, spine straight as a flagpole suit pressed sharp. Everyone quieted, not out of respect, out of confusion. He walked toward me, deliberate, no limp, just legacy in motion. Then loud enough for the whole tent to hear, he stopped in front of me. "General Walker," he said, "you saved my unit. You saved my life. Forgive my daughter." Silence. Real brittle silence. Jessica froze. Her mouth hung open like a puppet whose strings were suddenly yanked. Jason blinked, pulled his hand from hers like it burned. Phones lowered, glasses tilted. Gerald's smile twitched, but didn't falter. Vincent held my gaze, nodded once, walked back. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I turned to my plate of room-temp brisket sliders and picked up my fork. Jason still wouldn't look at me. Jessica squeezed his hand harder. Not affection, possession. Her diamond ring caught the light like armor, but I saw the cracks in it. And in her. Marco's voice echoed in my mind. "You're not here to make noise. You're here to listen." So I did. I listened to the toasts grow more forced, to the playlist skip once, to the way the air shifted from celebration to containment. No one said my name again, but they all felt it. By dessert, the facade was still holding, but barely. I was the ghost that refused to stay dead. And I had just been seen by someone they couldn't silence. I excused myself once. The restroom mirror was too clean, too bright. My face wasn't angry, not sad, just ready. I came back just in time for the bouquet toss. It arced above their heads like a silent threat. I didn't reach for it. No one offered it. They thought this night was a victory, but it was a signal. Vincent Brooks had spoken, in public, on record, with history behind his voice. That changed everything, and they knew it. They just didn't know what I was going to do with it. Monday came too fast. The scent of wine and performative joy still clung to my jacket like residue I couldn't quite scrub off. But I wore it anyway. Let them see I hadn't washed it away. The parking lot outside Whitford & Company was nearly empty, just Marco's Bronco and 2 sleek black sedans with tinted windows. No valet this time, just concrete silence and the kind of air that sits heavy before a storm. I climbed the stone steps slow, my boots echoing against the glass facade. The receptionist didn't greet me, just gestured toward a frosted door on the left like I already knew the drill. Inside was cold, surgically white, lit by downlights too bright to be kind. A room built to erase warmth. Gerald was already standing, his blazer immaculate cufflinks gleaming, smile thin and calculated. 2 men in charcoal suits sat beside him, one tapping a pen against a yellow legal pad, the other scrolling through a tablet with fingers too fast to be new to this. Linda was there too, perched slightly behind. Not part of the circle, but close enough to be dangerous. Her arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Marco leaned against the wall like furniture arms folded, no smile, no nod, just watching. "Let's begin," Gerald said, smoothing his lapel like he was preparing to deliver a eulogy he'd practiced for years. The younger suit cleared his throat. "We're here to execute the final will and testament of Walter Whitford," he said, as amended and notarized 2 weeks prior to his passing. I sat. No one offered condolences. Not a single "we're sorry for your loss." Just the humming air and the sound of a stylus tapping glass. Walter Whitford bequeaths the family estate, including all real property, liquid assets, and named trusts to his legally recognized descendants and appointed trustees, Gerald Whitford, Jacob Whitford, and Jessica Reynolds. My name didn't come up, not once. Silence. A dangerous kind of quiet. I waited, counted 5 full seconds before I spoke. "Is that all?" Gerald didn't flinch. "It was your grandfather's wish," he said, voice smooth to keep things simple. My voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. "Was it?" Linda shifted. "Barely." The lawyer continued robotically now, outlining tax clauses, minor distributions, funeral expenses. His voice static behind the roar in my ears. Because I remembered. I remembered Walter's hand on mine. Frail but firm. I remembered the last thing he said to me about the estate. "If something happens, you keep the legacy intact." He'd looked me in the eye. "I know you will." Now I didn't exist. As the meeting broke, Linda approached me. She didn't speak, just handed me her phone. A screenshot filled the screen, PDF viewer open. Whitford Will, V2, PDF. Beside it, a comment bubble, include Rachel W. as per verbal confirmation. "I saw this a month ago," she said quietly, "before they updated the server." I stared at it. "Why didn't you say anything?" "They locked me out the next day," she whispered. "I wasn't even supposed to be on that file. I thought it would get corrected. I thought—" Marco stepped in, then quietly slipping something into my palm. A flash drive. "What's this?" I asked. "Your inheritance," he said. Or at least the ghost of it. We didn't speak again until we reached his Bronco. The car hummed gently as I plugged the drive into my laptop. A folder appeared. Archives, www. Inside scans, dozens of them. Partial pages, PDFs, handwritten notes. I clicked through them with trembling fingers, then stopped. Page 4, gone. The file jumped from page 3 to page 5 without pause. Indexing intact, nothing messy, no scan error, just deleted, surgically. "Timestamp shows someone accessed the firm's archive the day after Walter died," Marco said. "Guess who?" He didn't wait for me to ask. He showed me the log. 1 line too precise to be coincidence. User G. Whitford. Location internal, time 2:14 a.m. Gerald. He'd waited for Walter to die, then gutted the will like it was cancer. Marco spoke again, voice low. "We can trace the edit. We can even show metadata corruption. But it won't hold. Not yet." Linda texted next. They registered the new version 2 days later. Legally clean. I stared at the screen, at the space where my name should have been. "They erased me," I said out loud. "Not just from the will, from history, from everything." "That means," Marco said, "they're afraid you exist." That was the moment it stopped being grief. It became purpose. Justice doesn't knock. It finds the spare key and walks in. We drove in silence to the Whitford estate. The gates loomed tall rust, bleeding into stone like the house itself was mourning. The keypad was still the same. 4 digits Walter's badge number from when he served in Korea. I punched it in. The gate groaned like a tired beast. "No one here?" Marco asked. "No one that matters," I replied. Inside the house smelled of old cherry wood and quiet rot. Dust clung to the corners like secrets. Walter's study was untouched. The same mahogany desk, the same crooked diploma from UT Law, the same velvet chair where he used to sit and quote Latin at the TV. I remembered what he said once years ago. Paper remembers what people try to forget, which meant the truth had to be here, somewhere. We found the basement behind a false wall in the dining room. A locked door. 3 tools and 10 minutes later, it gave way. Inside shelves of binders. Crates labeled receipts, 2003-2008 board minutes vault. And behind them a small metal cabinet. Combination locked. My fingers hesitated. Then muscle memory took over. 3 left, 2 right, 1 full turn back. Click. Inside a black folder wrapped in velvet. I opened it. Yellowed pages typewritten. Header Whitford Estate. Draft January 2023. My name. Underlined. Distribution 33% to Rachel Walker. 33% to Jacob. 33% to Community Outreach, no Jessica. No notary, Marco said. I pointed. Bottom left a military encryption stamp. Filed while he was still advising DOD, I said. That's his signature. Beneath it, a line in his handwriting: if they find this, they'll bury it. If you don't, unbury. Marco powered up the portable scanner. Let's back this up. Don't trust it in my hands, I said. Just then his phone buzzed. He glanced, frowned. Firewall breach. 3 days ago, main server. Someone accessed archived timestamp logs from inside this property. I froze. That means they're not just trying to erase you, he said. They forged him. Vincent Brooks's name was tucked in a corner of an old Rolodex. Walter kept in his study. One of those yellowed index card relics no one uses anymore, unless you're the kind of man who writes secrets in pencil. It sat behind his wills and codicils drawer, half buried beneath a layer of receipts and one untouched cigar. Brooks's address was printed in shaky handwriting. Albemarle County, a nursing facility I remembered only from an offhand comment Walter once made. He chose silence, Rachel. I never knew if that made him brave or just tired. Marco drove. I didn't trust my hands on the wheel. The road cut through hills and autumn pines like a wound, narrow and winding. When we reached the place, it didn't look like a battlefield. It looked like a holding cell for forgotten men. The kind of place where metals collected more dust than memory. We checked in at the front desk. The nurse, mid-50s, with the soft professionalism of someone who's seen every shade of regret, glanced at the name. Mr. Brooks doesn't get many visitors, she said. I'm not most visitors, I replied. Room 212 smelled of old books, antiseptic, and history no one wanted to talk about. The blinds were half closed. A muted black and white war movie played on the wall-mounted TV. Vincent Brooks sat in a recliner, shoulders square, but hands trembling slightly beneath a folded navy blanket. He didn't look at us when we entered, just reached for the remote and shut off the movie. I'm retired, he said without turning. I'm not here for legal advice, I said, just clarity. That's worse. I stepped closer, placing a printed photo on the side table. A scanned copy of Walter and Brooks standing beside a desk, Walter holding a pen midair, a typed document below him. January 2023. Do you remember this? He looked down slowly, adjusting his glasses. His fingers traced the edge of the photo. Then, with a quiet exhale, he nodded. I watched him sign that Brooks said. He was lucid, angry, but focused. Said it was the only version that told the truth. Then why was it replaced, I asked. His gaze hardened. Because the truth was inconvenient, and because Gerald doesn't leave fingerprints, just favors owed and fear owed back. Marco stayed near the door, silent but alert. Walter trusted you, I said. He called you his last spine. He called me worse too. That was our love language. I reached into my bag and pulled out a portable drive. Set it gently on the table. Help me restore what they buried you with, and I'll restore what they buried him with. Brooks stared at the metal casing like it was a landmine. Encryption. Military grade. Old signature chain. Embedded metadata trails. He smiled, bitter and brief. Of course. Walter never trusted civilian tech. You're the only one who can still decode that stack, Marco added. You know this puts you in danger, Brooks said. I was erased, I replied. You can't kill someone twice. He didn't speak right away. The TV flickered slightly behind him, casting slow-motion shadows on the walls. Then he picked up the photo again, held it like something sacred, and nodded. All right, he whispered. I've stayed silent long enough. By the time we left the facility, the sun had started to dip behind the ridge, leaving gold streaks across the windshield. Marco didn't speak until we hit the freeway. He's in. You think it's enough? No, I said, but it's a start. That night, we returned to Walter's home. The lights were still off. No signs of intrusion, but Marco swept the perimeter anyway. He didn't like coincidences, especially ones involving server breaches and family lawyers, who smiled too easily. Walter's private office was behind a bookcase, old mechanism magnetic lock, hidden switch carved into the spine of the Federalist Papers. It creaked open like a vault forgotten by time. Inside dust floated like suspended judgment. His desk was covered in a thin plastic sheet like they were preserving legacy by sealing it in silence. On the wall, a Georgetown diploma hung slightly crooked frame between two military commendations I'd only ever seen once outside his drawer. Marco powered up the terminal. Brooks had given us an override code, 6 characters Latin phrase Walter used to mutter when cases went sideways. Fiat Veritas. Drive connected. Command line opened. Marco typed fast, then paused. Hidden directory. Legacy final. He opened it. 6 files, 5 PDFs, 1 video. I clicked the video. Walter appeared on screen, seated at that very desk. His voice steady posture, straight eyes heavy with urgency. If you're seeing this, he began, the others got there first. But I'll be damned if they get the last word. He looked directly into the camera. My granddaughter, Rachel Walker, is the only one worthy of this name. If this recording is found, let it be known my will was mine, and mine alone. My throat tightened. Marco stayed quiet, hands folded. Walter continued. I've attached a written declaration, and a draft email written the night I realized what Gerald was planning. I didn't send it. I thought I'd misjudged. But if they went forward anyway, this is my proof. The video flickered and ended. I opened the mail draft. No recipient, no subject, just words. If they alter this, it wasn't me. If you're reading this, Gerald has acted outside my consent. The legacy belongs to Rachel. This is final. Signed, W. Whitford. 10:41 p.m., April 12, 2023. Marco double-checked the timestamp. That night, Gerald was in New York, speaking at a military symposium. No way he was in Texas signing any revised document. Then his alibi just cracked, I said. We sent the video and email to Linda. She appeared via secure call hair, pulled back glasses low. Upload it, she said. We waited. 2 minutes passed. The signature hash matches Walter's DoD encryption key, she confirmed. It's authentic. I stared at the blinking cursor in the draft email. He never hit send. But I would. Is this enough to win, Marco asked. Not yet, Linda said. We need corroboration. A witness to the original will. Brooks qualifies. He'll testify, I asked. He already is, she replied. I scheduled the first hearing. Marco leaned back. Then what's next? I looked down at the flash drive in my palm. The last thing Walter ever hid. They tried to bury a soldier, I said. Now we dig him back out. The hearing room inside the Travis County Courthouse was colder than I expected, not just from air conditioning, but from anticipation. The walls were beige, the lighting too clean, and every chair felt harder than it should have been. Rows of seats filled slowly, a few reporters with notepads poised 2 suits from the Veterans Affairs Board, and more than a handful of faces I hadn't seen since before the war, all carrying expressions that danced between curiosity and guilt. I walked in wearing navy, nothing flashy, nothing forgotten, just enough to be formal, less than theatrical. Gerald sat across the aisle with his attorney, silver suit, slick hair glasses that said, I bill by the minute. He didn't acknowledge me, but the way he tapped his index finger against the table screamed louder than words. Linda opened the session calmly. This is a preliminary civil hearing regarding allegations of inheritance fraud, document tampering, and financial misconduct involving the Whitford Foundation and its acting director, Mr. Gerald Whitford. The judge was sharp-eyed and older than she looked. Her robe didn't carry flair, but her silence did. I stood when it was my turn. My name is Rachel Walker, retired Colonel, United States Army, granddaughter of the late Walter Whitford. Until 2 weeks ago, I had been effectively erased. I placed a sealed document on the evidence table. This is the original version of Walter Whitford's final intent, digitally archived, dated, encrypted, and backed by testimony. Linda handed out copies. Exhibits A through F, she said, include the video message, metadata logs, and original email draft signed with Walter's DoD signature hash. Gerald's attorney stood. Your Honor, we challenge the admissibility. The email wasn't sent. The video could have been fabricated. The letter is handwritten. Anyone with the right software. Marco didn't wait to be invited. He rolled forward a laptop, connected it to the monitor. Here's the embedded metadata, he said. Time-stamped, location verified, signed. Using a private key registered exclusively to Walter Whitford through a federal-level PKI chain. This encryption predates his death by weeks. It can't be altered without corrupting the chain. He clicked once. A string of code glowed on screen. The hash signature blinked. Matched, untouched. The courtroom quieted. I stepped forward again. Even if you doubt the letter or the video, ask yourself this. Why hasn't the Foundation released a financial report in 3 years? Why are board records sealed? Why is Gerald's name on properties not disclosed in the filing? Linda added, we request that the court open a formal inquiry into Foundation expenditures and offshore transfers linked to Mr. Whitford. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Whitford, Gerald finally spoke. This is all emotional theater, he said. She's disgruntled, estranged. There's no substance here, just smoke and military nostalgia. But his voice lacked conviction. The judge leaned forward. Then you should have nothing to fear from an audit. She struck the gavel once. The court grants a temporary injunction on Mr. Whitford's financial control of the Foundation. Personal accounts will be frozen pending a formal review. Gasps spread. Gerald's lawyer whispered something urgently, but he didn't respond. He was too busy staring at the table. Outside, the cameras were already gathering. Linda walked beside me, her heels sharp against the marble floor. He wasn't ready for that, she said. He thought we wouldn't get this far, I replied. She glanced at me. You ready for what's next? No, I said honestly, but that's never stopped me before. That night, we met in a small cafe tucked inside an old bookstore off Congress Avenue. Dim lights, thick espresso, and the kind of jazz that whispered through the air without asking permission. Linda was already at the back table. Marco sat beside her laptop, closed face, unreadable. Then he walked in Mark Winstead, a journalist from the old school. Notepad in hand, blazer frayed at the collar, silver hair combed straight back. He didn't shake hands. Just sat flipped to a blank page. I assume this isn't about a Foundation fundraiser, he said dryly. I slid a folder across the table. You're holding what no one else has. Walter's voice, his words, his legacy. He read silently, page by page. After 2 minutes, he muttered, Jesus. Linda spoke. You'll write it clean, no speculation, just the record. Let the public connect the dots. He nodded slowly. This isn't just family betrayal. This is a coordinated erasure. Exactly, I said. They buried him while he was still breathing, then buried me after. He reached the final page, the handwritten letter. My name circled. Then he looked at me for the first time. You know they'll retaliate. Smear campaigns, legal threats, character assassination. We're ready, Linda said. And the timing matters. She pulled a memo from her bag. Heritage Watch Veterans Day Special Edition, embargoed until November 11th. You'll publish that day, she said. And they can't silence it without turning the nation against them. He nodded, then scribbled a single line in his notebook. The last Whitford. The room felt heavier after he left. I sat quietly looking at the brass plaque on the wall, an old quote carved above the counter. Truth waits for no invitation. I exhaled. Jessica will see it before it prints, Linda said. She'll panic. She already has, Marco muttered. He pulled out a small cream envelope. No seal, just handwriting I recognized immediately. Jessica's. For Rachel. I stared at it, then opened it. The letter inside was rushed, smudged, a few tears, or maybe ink. Gerald gave me a choice, it read. Help him erase you or watch Jacob lose everything. His business, his name. Gerald controls the Foundation, the lawyers, even the press. I believed him. Or maybe I just didn't want to be poor again. But you deserve to hear it from me, not from them. At the bottom was a micro SD card taped with medical tape. I recorded him once, the day he threatened me. Maybe it's enough, maybe it's not. But I'm sorry. Marco slid his laptop across the table. I inserted the card. The recording crackled, then Gerald's voice came through clear sharp. You think this is about family, your decoration. If you don't cooperate, I pull funding. Jacob's company folds. Your name disappears. I own every thread in this tapestry. Then Jessica's voice, barely a whisper. So you're blackmailing me? No, he replied. I'm giving you clarity. I closed the laptop. Linda spoke first. That's enough to trigger a full audit. Financial, legal, reputational. I slid the letter and the card into a folder. No more mercy, I said. Marco leaned back. Then it's time to bring the next domino down. There's a certain quiet before public exposure, a stillness that isn't peace but pressure, like the moment right before a sniper breathes out. That's how the Whitford estate felt the night before Veterans Day. Silent, pristine, unaware that it was sitting on a fuse I'd already lit. Marco was in the back office finalizing the data chain for the media leak. Linda was coordinating with the courthouse for emergency motion filings. Jessica hadn't responded since the letter, but the SD card had already been authenticated. The recording would go live in 22 hours, embedded inside a breaking op-ed titled, "The Legacy They Tried to Bury." I sat alone in Walter's study, the same chair he used when he signed the original will. A half-empty tumbler of rye rested beside a photo of him and me, 4th of July, 2001. He was in his old flight jacket. I had gap teeth and a toy dog tag I refused to take off. In the photo, he's smiling like he knows something I don't. Maybe he did. My phone vibrated once. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. Rachel, Jacob's voice. He sounded tired, not performatively sad, just raw. Where are you? I asked. Outside, he said. Your headlights are off. I stood, walked to the front door, and opened it. His car was parked half hidden behind the hedges. I didn't say anything as he walked up. He wore a hoodie and jeans, no ring, no press badge, just the same face I used to protect from nightmares. You know, he said softly, you could have just called me. I narrowed my eyes. And what would you have done, Jacob? Pretended none of this was real. No, he said, voice rough. But I wouldn't have found out through the court docket and a journalist's inbox. I stepped back and let him in. The house creaked like it remembered him. He walked past the study without looking. Into the kitchen. Poured himself water like he used to when we were kids, exact same glass, still in the second cabinet left of the sink. I didn't know about the will, he said. Not the real one. Jessica told me Walter left things intentionally simple, said it was to avoid probate war. I watched him carefully. And you believed that? He nodded, shame flickering. I wanted to. I walked closer. Then why are you here? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. Set it on the counter. Because the day after Walter died, Gerald gave me a folder. Said it was legacy transition material. It didn't feel right, so I kept a copy before he deleted the originals. I picked up the drive. You checked it? No, I was scared of what I'd find. I slipped it into Marco's machine and let the auto-scan run. It pinged after 8 seconds. A folder named wint.pdf and an encrypted zip labeled Phoenix Sentry. Marco appeared behind us. That file name Phoenix Sentry, it's a DoD firewall test protocol, he muttered. Why would Gerald have that? I opened the zip with Walter's old cipher key. Inside a classified white paper draft titled Legacy Channel Private, Enclave Protocol for Non-Combat Asset Recovery, and attached an unedited list of assets tied to Whitford Foundation accounts, including a subfund labeled Veteran Discretionary. Millions! Hidden under layers of LLCs. Most of it transferred offshore 3 days after Walter died. Gerald's name was on every routing authorization. Marco's voice dropped. This is more than inheritance fraud. This is federal. I looked at Jacob. Did you know? He shook his head, face pale. I swear on everything, no. Then tell the truth in writing. Sign an affidavit, I said. Say what you saw when you saw it and what Gerald gave you. He nodded slowly. I will. The rest of the night blurred. Linda connected with federal investigators. The white paper and asset list were duplicated, hashed, and emailed to a legal contact inside the Inspector General's office. At 5:12 a.m., we received confirmation a preliminary case had been opened. By dawn, a subpoena was on its way. But not before Gerald made his move. I was drinking black coffee on the porch when the news hit. Breaking Whitford Foundation denies allegations, claims deepfake plot orchestrated by disgraced veteran. The article included a doctored clip of my speech from Afghanistan warped out of context. The headline was brutal, the subtext worse, disgruntled. Mentally unstable, possibly under investigation. I read it 3 times. The bile rose fast, then settled like iron. Marco stepped outside, phone in hand. 3 other media outlets just pulled their stories. They're scared. Legal pressure, maybe more. Jessica, I asked. He shook his head, unreachable. Linda called next. Federal agents need more time. The evidence holds, but Gerald's spinning a bigger narrative. Says you faked the metadata. That your military record is in dispute. I laughed once, hollow. That man wants to bury me twice. Then we make it harder, she said. There's one move left. What? We leak the military video. I hesitated. Walter never wanted it public. Linda's voice softened. He also didn't want to be erased. That footage, the moment he signed his words, his face, it's truth. And it might be the only thing the public still trusts. I closed my eyes, thought of his voice. If they find this, they'll bury it. If you don't unbury. I opened my laptop, dragged the file over. Marco looked at me. Once this goes out, there's no taking it back. Good, I said. It means they can't either. I hit upload. The video went live at 8:01 a.m., and at 8:04, my phone buzzed again. A single text, no number. You shouldn't have done that. By 10:30 a.m., the video had over 300,000 views. Walter's voice, steady and deliberate, was playing in every corner of the internet that cared about truth, legacy, or military honor. Veterans groups reposted it. Journalists followed it. Even a few senators quote-tweeted it with cautious, developing remarks. But with visibility came retaliation. At 11:12 a.m., a news alert flashed across every feed. I followed. VA launches internal review into Colonel Rachel Walker's service record. I stared at the headline for 10 seconds, then refreshed. They'd done it. They weaponized the one thing that had never failed me, my record. Marco was pacing. They timed it down to the minute. The moment you pulled the curtain back, they launched their smear. Linda's voice came in hot on speaker. The review isn't real, not yet. It's a signal. Gerald has someone on the inside. They want people to question you before they question him. I gritted my teeth. So we let the... No, she said. We push harder. She sent over a motion, an emergency filing, requesting protection under the Whistleblower Integrity Act. It wouldn't erase the VA's threat, but it would put a spotlight on anyone who tampered with records during an open fraud investigation. By noon, it was filed, public, traceable. But Gerald wasn't slowing. That afternoon, a black SUV parked across from Walter's house. Didn't move for hours. No plates, no occupants visible. Marco walked past it twice casually, but the glass was tinted past legal. They're watching, he said, and they want you to know it. The anxiety wasn't theatrical. It clung to the air. I could feel it in my jaw in the tight way I held the mug in my hand. The last time I felt this hunted was in Mosul, when intelligence leaks put our unit in sniper range, and every rooftop became a question mark. Linda arrived just before sunset. She brought a folder. Thick, labeled W. Whitford, Discretionary Network. These are the Foundation's ghost accounts. We found 12, all funneled through a Cayman trust linked to Gerald's personal holding company. He's been pulling money out since 2018. I flipped through the records. Charitable funds rerouted, scholarships canceled, veterans aid budgets slashed. He bled the legacy dry piece by piece and masked it with glossy press releases and staged donation drives. Then Linda slid over the final page. This is the one that matters. It was a wire transfer, dated 2 weeks before Walter died. $3.4 million to a shell company titled Rose Hall Consulting. Owner Jessica Reynolds. I looked at the signature field. Walter's name, but it was cropped. Linda raised an eyebrow. Forged. Marco opened the file. On screen, enlarged the metadata. Timestamp doesn't match the printer logs. This page was added later. I leaned back, breath shallow. She was in on it from the start, I said. No, Linda corrected. She was paid to be in on it. We drove to her that night. No more emails, no more text. Her townhouse was quiet. Lights on upstairs. Porch light flickering like a nervous tick. I rang the bell twice. She opened the door in slippers and a cardigan mascara, smudged a wine glass half full in one hand. She didn't look surprised. "You know why we're here," I said. Jessica stepped aside. "He told me it was protection money," she whispered. "Said I'd be safer if my name was on something. Said Jacob's business would never survive unless I cooperated." I showed her the transfer. Her face crumbled. "I never cashed it. I never touched it. I swear to God." Marco spoke gently. "That account's active. It paid for a political PAC last year. It's not dormant." Her knees buckled slightly. She leaned against the wall. Then he forged my access. My name was the shield. I pressed. "Did you sign anything else?" She nodded. "Once. A form. Gerald said it was just an updated financial agreement for PR purposes." Linda unfolded another file. "It wasn't PR. It was power of attorney." Jessica's eyes widened. "What?" "You gave him legal rights to act in your name, including foundation disbursements and vote allocation." Her voice cracked. "He used me." I stared at her. "He used all of us." Jessica stepped forward. "Let me help. Let me testify." Linda hesitated. "If we use her, we risk everything. Her name is on the crimes." Marco looked at me. "But if we don't, we may not break him." I nodded slowly. "Then we do it. We bring her in." That night, Jessica recorded a sworn deposition, full statement, full timeline. It included one final detail. The night Walter died, Gerald took a call. Around 2:00 a.m., he left the house for 3 hours, said he had to clean up a file trail. He came back smelling like bourbon and printer ink. Linda stopped the recorder. "That matches the server breach. We'll submit this to the court tomorrow," I said. "All of it." Marco leaned forward. "Then we should be ready for him to hit back hard." As if on cue, Linda's phone lit up. "Unknown number," she answered. No voice, just silence. Then one distorted sentence. "You're already too late." The courthouse was packed. Every seat filled every hallway, echoing with speculation. Veterans in dress blues, journalists clustered around charging cords. Foundation employees whispering in tight knots, unsure whether they'd be praised or subpoenaed. I walked in through the side entrance with Linda and Marco at my flank. The thick file of evidence in Linda's hands like a loaded weapon. Jessica followed wrapped in a navy coat, too big for her face, drawn but steady. No makeup, no excuses. Just the truth, finally. Inside the judge's bench loomed like a monument, solid, unmoved by press cycles or reputations. Today wasn't about drama. It was about burial of lies of greed of a legacy hijacked. Gerald entered 5 minutes late. Alone. No attorney, no entourage. Just a polished suit and a smirk that dared the court to challenge him. The hearing began. Linda stood, voice clear. "Your Honor, we submit newly obtained testimony and financial evidence implicating Mr. Gerald Whitford in a multi-year scheme to defraud the Whitford Foundation and falsify the final will of the late Walter Whitford." She handed over the affidavits. Jessica's deposition, Jacob's corroboration, metadata chains, offshore transfers. The forged signature exposed by ink inconsistencies and timestamp mismatches. Then she played the SD card. Gerald's voice filled the courtroom. "Your decoration! I own every thread in this tapestry." Silence fell like a gavel. The judge turned to Gerald. "Do you wish to respond to these charges?" He smiled. "No. Just that. No outrage, no defense." He sat down, folded his hands. Linda blinked. "Your Honor, we request immediate judicial review and suspension of all operational control held by Mr. Whitford over the foundation." The judge nodded. "Granted. This court will issue a formal injunction and refer criminal matters to the Attorney General's office for federal investigation." It was done. Just like that, it was over. Except it wasn't. Because 10 minutes later, as we exited the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and cameras flashing like war zones, a Homeland Security vehicle pulled up. 2 agents stepped out, black suits, unreadable faces. "Colonel Rachel Walker." "Yes. You're under administrative review pending inquiry into secure materials release and breach of veteran service protocols." My ears buzzed. Linda stepped between us. "This is retaliation. She's protected under the Whistleblower Act. The foundation is the subject of active federal review." The agent cut her off. "This order comes from above. Clearance level 5. We need to speak with Colonel Walker, privately." I turned to Linda, then to Marco. "Get the tapes to the IG, all of them. The hard copies, too. If they take my comms, don't wait." Marco's jaw clenched. "We won't." The agents led me to the black SUV. Inside, I expected cold silence. But instead, a woman waited. Gray hair in a tight bun, military posture in civilian clothes, no badge, no introduction. "I knew Walter," she said. "He helped me when no one else would." I stared at it. "Then why am I here?" "Because Gerald didn't act alone. And what you've exposed, it's just the first branch of a deeper tree." My breath caught. He was moving money not just for himself. There are others. Inside DC, inside procurement, inside defense. I narrowed my eyes. "You're saying Walter stumbled onto something bigger. He wasn't supposed to change his will. He wasn't supposed to leave you anything. Then why tell me this now?" She leaned in. "Because someone needs to finish what he started. And because now that you've pulled back the curtain, you don't get to walk away." She slid a small envelope into my lap. Inside a photo, black and white. Walter shaking hands with a man I'd never seen before. A handwritten note on the back. "Follow the architect. He knows the rest." "Who's the architect?" I asked. But she was already opening the door. "You'll know him when he finds you." The SUV door closed behind me. I stood on the curb, wind cutting through my coat, the courthouse behind me, already fading in the rear view. Justice wasn't a finish line, it was a doorway, and I had just stepped into the next room. Story 2. I'm Elise Navarro, 35, former operations strategist at Zenith Quant Analytics. A place where loyalty means nothing, and truth is just a PR slogan. The morning it happened, the office was so quiet, it felt like walking into a church before a funeral. Phones buzzed behind lowered screens. Eyes darted away when they met mine. I didn't need to ask why. I already knew. It all started 3 nights earlier. The company had sponsored a tech expo at the downtown arena, sleek lights, keynote speeches, and those awkward team-building mixers where everyone pretends they aren't watching their bosses drink too much. And right there on the arena's panoramic kiss, cam up on the 70-foot LED screen, was Theo Langford, our beloved CEO, and Evelyn Baird, the head of People and Culture, locked in a kiss so steamy the audience gasped. Married, both of them, but not to each other. By Sunday afternoon, the video was already on TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit threads, titled "CEO Caught Red-Handed." Again. So by Monday, Theo was out for blood. "Elise, my office, now!" His voice cracked like a whip across the open floor. I didn't flinch, just stood, smoothed my navy blazer, and walked into the lion's den. His assistant avoided my eyes as I passed. The door shut with a snap. "You think this is funny?" he spat, hurling a red folder across the desk. "You arranged this. The seating, the camera, the press presence. You set us up." I tilted my head. "You think I have that kind of influence over the AV team at an arena? You knew exactly where the camera would hit. You made sure we were in the spotlight." He jabbed a manicured finger at me. "And now you're going to pay for it." He slid a document toward me, a termination letter. My name was already printed in bold. "Immediate dismissal," he read aloud like a judge handing down a sentence. "Breach of confidentiality, conflict of interest, PR sabotage." I took the letter, read it slowly, carefully. My pulse didn't change. I looked him straight in the eye and said 4 words. "I accept your decision." He blinked. That rattled him. He wanted me to cry, plead, grovel, but I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "Security will escort you out in 20 minutes, he said coldly. I nodded once, turned and walked out. I didn't pack my things, didn't even glance at my team. I just walked to the elevator, pulled out my personal phone and texted one person. "Rhea, it's begun." Rhea Quinn had been head of risk compliance at Zenith before she resigned 6 months ago, citing philosophical differences. What she really meant was, she found too much rot and refused to stay silent. Back then, I wasn't ready to follow her out the door. I had too much at stake. But I started watching, listening, collecting. Emails forwarded to my private cloud. Spreadsheets renamed and encrypted. Meeting logs. Expense statements. Records of inflated vendor contracts and backroom deals buried beneath consulting fees. I wasn't hoarding for revenge. Not then. I was bracing for the moment when the system would try to erase me, and I'd need to remind them that ghosts can still burn the house down. 20 minutes later, I handed my badge company phone and laptop to the waiting guard. He looked uncomfortable. Young new. "Sorry," he mumbled. "Don't be," I said, smiling. At 12:03 p.m., I was sitting at a cafe 3 blocks from the office. My laptop open espresso untouched. Across from me sat Isaac Hale, the company's internal auditor, and more importantly, the only man in Zenith's leadership team who hadn't sold his spine for stock options. "You said it was urgent," he said, glancing around nervously. He was the careful type, never wore his wedding ring to work, but never missed a deadline. I slid a small flash drive across the table. Everything you've ever suspected. With proof. He didn't touch it, just stared. What is this? Fraud, bribery, illicit partnerships with shell companies, fake consulting invoices, falsified board communications, and yes, dozens of HR complaints silenced by Evelyn herself. Isaac paled. Elise, this could sink the company. I smiled. Exactly. He picked up the drive like it was radioactive. I can't promise anything, he said cautiously. You don't have to, I replied, sipping my coffee. Because it's already with the board. That's just a courtesy copy. His face froze. I emailed the full report to Chairwoman Naomi Lynn at 9:00 a.m. Everything's time-stamped, verified, and compiled with a neat little bow. Isaac exhaled slowly, like a man realizing he's sitting on a powder keg. You realize what you're doing, right? Yes, I said. I'm starting the cleanup process, whether they like it or not. That night, I stayed up organizing files in alphabetical order. By Tuesday, the first cracks appeared. I wasn't in the building, but I didn't need to be. My phone buzzed at 9:13 a.m. From Rhea. Naomi just called emergency board meeting. Unscheduled. No agenda. Theo looks like he's seen a ghost. I allowed myself a quiet smile, because I was the ghost. And I wasn't done haunting. By Wednesday morning, Zenith Quant was cracking like glass under pressure. I wasn't there to see it firsthand, of course, but my phone fed me a play-by-play from loyal allies who were still inside. Rhea texted at 8:04 a.m. Naomi just arrived. No small talk, eyes like flint. At 8:37, Theo tried to blame a disgruntled ex-employee. Naomi asked him to define disgruntled on record. Meanwhile, I was 2 blocks away, sitting at a co-working space surrounded by quiet freelancers and humming espresso machines. On my second monitor, financial logs Slack exports, and something new, an anonymous whistleblower email I'd just received from a junior project manager named Callie. She wasn't on my radar before, but her tip came with screenshots, encrypted threads showing Theo had approved a pipeline integration project with a known off-book contractor. Cost $7 million. ROI 0. Vendor's address, a residential duplex in New Jersey. I almost laughed. I messaged Callie directly, told her she'd done the right thing, offered resources, legal protection, told her to hold tight, that we'd need her voice but not yet. Everything had to build, strategically. One wrong move, and Theo would spin it all into a rogue vendetta. But if we moved methodically, the truth would do what the board couldn't make him irrelevant. At 9:12, I got a ping from Isaac. It was a single line. He just offered Evelyn a severance package to resign quietly. Not fired, not investigated. Just a golden handshake and a flight to Portugal, I'm sure. I shook my head. Typical. Zenith would rather bleed integrity than admit it had been poisoned from the inside. I replied, "Let him bury himself. We'll hand them the shovel." At 10:22, I got another message. This one from Naomi Lynn herself. Ms. Navarro, can you be available for a secure call at 2:30 p.m. today? I stared at it for a beat. She was CEO of 3 firms before she joined Zenith's board. She didn't ask questions unless she already knew the answers. I replied yes. She didn't respond. Classic Naomi. I spent the next 4 hours refining my documents, reorganizing them not for quantity, but clarity. People don't believe data, they believe patterns. I rebuilt the timeline. Focused on one thing, Theo's misuse of authority as a deliberate business strategy. Not a scandal, a business model. The manipulated forecasts, the deflated payout delays, the sweetheart contracts handed to friends of the board. All wrapped in one neat truth, Theo didn't lead Zenith, he bled it. At exactly 2:29, my screen lit up. Private Zoom call, no name shown, just Conference A. I clicked in. Naomi appeared first in a navy suit with a stern face and a crystal-clear mic. Then 2 other windows opened. Board member Erica Miles, tech investor with a sharp tongue, and Robert Chang, Zenith's longest-tenured stakeholder, a quiet man with glacier patience. Naomi spoke first. Elise, thank you for your time. What you've provided us is significant, but we need clarity on your objective. Do you want reinstatement, a settlement, public exposure? I didn't hesitate. No. I don't want my job back. I want the rot cleaned out. Quietly, professionally, permanently, Robert raised a brow. "You're not looking for a payout. I'm looking for accountability," I said. "And maybe some peace." Naomi leaned in slightly. "Then you understand that this can't be solved in headlines." "I understand. That's why I sent it to you first." They were silent for a long moment. Finally, Naomi nodded once. "We'll be in touch." The screen went black. And just like that, I knew the fuse was lit. The next 24 hours were brutal for Theo. By Thursday morning, Claire, the marketing head, texted me a 3-word bombshell, compliance seized laptop. An hour later, internal audit frozen. Legal counsel brought in. By mid-afternoon, Theo canceled Q3 press call. PR spinning family emergency. I nearly laughed. I'd heard that phrase before. It's corporate speak for, "We're about to toss this man overboard." Still, I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about toppling Theo. That was too small. It was about changing the entire culture that let him thrive. You don't pull out a single weed, you clear the soil. So I made one more move. I sent a message to someone I hadn't contacted in over a year, Mila Trent, former head of legal ethics at Zenith. She'd left after being repeatedly sidelined by Theo's inner circle. Last I heard, she was consulting for startups. We met for lunch at a quiet Korean restaurant she liked near the art district. She looked surprised to see me. "Elise Navarro. Thought you were still wearing the mask for the Empire." I smiled. "Not anymore. I'm burning the uniform." I slid a manila envelope across the table. She didn't open it, just nodded. "I heard about the board shakeup. You want my help? I want your clarity. I want your name attached to the policy overhaul. The cleanup crew needs credibility." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not just taking Theo down. You're building something after." I nodded. "Then I'm in." That evening, Zenith Quant's share price dipped for the first time in 3 quarters. A subtle tremor. But insiders noticed, because investors always smell smoke before the fire. By Friday morning, Zenith Quant didn't feel like a tech powerhouse anymore. It felt like a building with no foundation still standing but groaning with every shift. Rhea called me before dawn, her voice low. "Theo hasn't shown up since yesterday afternoon. Naomi's not returning calls. And Evelyn." She cleared her desk at 6 a.m. The board hadn't announced anything yet. But the silence. That was the first real announcement. People notice when loud men go quiet. I was sitting in a corner booth at my usual cafe, watching rain streak down the window like the city was trying to wash itself clean. My inbox held 3 new messages, one from Callie with more screenshots this time implicating Theo's assistant in backdating approval signatures, one from Mila confirming she'd drafted the ethics charter revision, and one from Claire FYI whispers of a strategic leadership transition. Legal sent NDAs to half the exec team. I sipped my tea slowly. The word strategic always amused me. It was code for, "We're pretending we planned this." But I didn't have time to dwell on word games. Because something else was happening, something I hadn't predicted. People started reaching out. Not for gossip, not for leverage, for truth. First was Hassan, a systems engineer I barely knew. He DM'd me, said he remembered how I helped him when his project was gutted for budget reasons. Turned out, Theo had reallocated funds mid-quarter to push a private product for an overseas client. Off the books, no documentation, just handshake deals and encrypted chats. Hassan had copies, logs, calendar data, even a name Rurik. Rurik wasn't on Zenith's payroll. I'd never heard of him. But a quick search through archived email metadata connected him to Nexus 14, a shell entity that supposedly specialized in predictive algorithm simulations. Translation: a ghost firm designed to launder R&D. I leaned back in my seat. The corruption wasn't just internal, it was global. By midday, I was back at the co-working space, scanning every file, every thread, until patterns started to click. Theo hadn't just manipulated quarterly forecasts. He was using Zenith's infrastructure to prop up independent ventures with board-blessed silence. No wonder the audits always came back clean. The dirt wasn't in the books. It was hidden behind digital scaffolding no one had dared to challenge. Until now. I called Mila. "We need an external investigation," I told her. "Not just HR cleanup, this is cross-border fraud." "I agree," she said. "I'll reach out to the Financial Conduct Authority and SEC anonymously. They'll probe under sealed inquiry if we frame it right." "Do it," I said. That evening, the leak hit social media. A blurry image of Theo walking out of Zenith's headquarters, flanked by 2 security officers carrying a single briefcase. No smile, no wave. Just that rigid, rehearsed posture of a man trying to look unbothered while his kingdom burned behind him. I didn't post it. Claire didn't either. Someone else had. Probably a staffer tired of waiting for truth to be served in private. The comment section exploded. I read a few lines before closing the tab. I wasn't here for the circus. I was here for closure. Still, the photo meant one thing: Theo was officially out. No memo had gone out, no press release, but everyone knew. The lie had finally stopped pretending to be in charge, and for a brief moment I thought it was over. But endings are never clean, because Saturday morning I got a knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, a tall man in a long gray coat stood there holding a slim envelope. "Elise Navarro," he asked. "Yes, this is for you. From the board of Zenith Quant." He handed me the envelope and left without another word. Inside was a single sheet of thick white paper. It read, "We request your presence at a confidential strategy meeting on Monday 10 a.m. Location and secure credentials will follow via encrypted message. Your contributions have been recognized. Your discretion is assumed. No signature, just a red Zenith logo at the bottom." I stared at the letter for a full minute. They weren't inviting me back. They were inviting me in, not as an employee, as an architect of whatever came next. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on my kitchen counter. Then I sat down, took a breath, and let it settle in. The company that fired me in a panic was now asking for my guidance. Funny how integrity looks like rebellion until the ground beneath you shifts. And now, with the whole truth exposed and power up for grabs, I knew I had to decide. Would I help rebuild Zenith Quant, or finish tearing it down? Because the collapse may have had a sound, but what comes after? That would be a choice. Monday morning came with an eerie quiet. No traffic, no emails, no buzz in the hallway. Just me, my coat, and a black sedan idling in front of my building with tinted windows, and a driver who didn't speak. The address in the encrypted message had been a private suite inside a converted financial district townhouse, discreet off-grid, impossible to trace on public calendars. When I stepped out, a woman in a sleek gray pantsuit met me at the door. "Ms. Navarro, this way, please." She led me through polished marble halls and into a room where 3 familiar faces sat: Naomi Lynn Erica Miles and Robert Chang. A 4th chair was empty, waiting. Naomi gestured to it. "We appreciate your discretion." I sat, hands resting calmly on the mahogany table. No small talk, just silence that hummed with weight. Naomi spoke first. "Theo Langford has formally resigned. The board has accepted his departure under a confidentiality clause. We've initiated a third-party investigation into all financial irregularities tied to Nexus 14 and its international subsidiaries." I didn't flinch. I already knew. Mila had confirmed over the weekend federal investigators had accepted the documents we'd submitted under seal. Erica folded her hands. "We want you to serve as interim chief strategy officer. You'll report directly to the board. Your primary role will be ethical restoration, executive, auditing, and restructuring the risk arm of Zenith Quant." I blinked once. "You want me back in the building?" Robert answered this time. "We don't want the old version of you. We want the version that saw everything and didn't look away." "That's rare," Naomi added. "We believe the future of this company depends on rebuilding not just profit lines, but principle." I didn't respond right away. My mind had already wandered to the people they hadn't mentioned. Rhea, Claire, Isaac, Callie, the engineers, the assistants, the overlooked and overburdened employees who stayed silent for fear of being next. This wasn't just about leadership. This was about culture. About rot that hadn't just settled, it had grown roots. "If I do this," I said slowly, "I choose my own team. I clean house without handcuffs. That includes board-facing compliance policies and immunity for whistleblowers. Retroactive." Naomi didn't blink. "Agreed." And Mila comes in as external legal ethics advisor. Full access. Another pause. Then a nod. "Done." I leaned back. "Then I have one final term." Erica tilted her head, which is no NDA. That hung in the air like a live wire. I kept going. "I want the right to speak if this turns into another cover-up. If the board backpedals or spins this into a sanitized rebranding stunt, I reserve the right to speak publicly. Full transparency clause. No gag order." The room went still. Naomi looked at Robert, then Erica, then back at me. Accepted. Just like that, I said yes. That afternoon, I walked into Zenith Quant headquarters for the first time in 7 days. The same marble floors, the same glass doors. But everything felt different, like a familiar street after an earthquake. Isaac met me in the lobby, holding a clipboard and looking more relieved than surprised. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "Neither did I replied. We headed straight to the top floor. Theo's former office had been sealed. Literally. Frosted glass tape across the handle contents untouched. My new office was 2 doors down. Smaller no-corner windows, but that suited me. I wasn't here to admire the skyline. I was here to rebuild something they almost destroyed. The first meeting I held wasn't with the board. It was with my people. I gathered Rhea, Claire, Mila, Isaac, and Hassan into the small conference room we used to jokingly call the war room. Nobody smiled. Nobody clapped. We all knew the gravity of what we'd stepped into. I stood at the head of the table. "This isn't about revenge," I said plainly. "This is about restoring truth, from the inside out. If anyone here wants out, no judgment. But if you stay, it's full transparency. We won't protect titles. We protect facts." Nobody moved, not even a breath. Then Rhea said, "I'm in." Claire nodded. Same. Isaac adjusted his glasses. "Let's fix the mess they made." Mila smiled faintly. "You handle the present. I'll protect your future." Hassan said nothing. He just opened his laptop and started scanning system logs. That night, I stayed in the office long after the last elevator dinged shut. I walked through empty halls, lights humming, low screens still flickering with forgotten spreadsheets and paused chats. Everything looked so ordinary. And that's the danger, isn't it? That corruption looks boring from the outside. Just numbers, just memos, just policy lines edited quietly in the dark. At 11:37 p.m., I opened a new document on my desktop, titled it Zenith Quant, Reformation Blueprint. I typed the first line. Truth is not disruptive. Silence is. Then I closed the laptop, leaned back, and for the first time in a long time, felt the weight start to shift. By the end of the first week, the air inside Zenith Quant wasn't tense. It was surgical. Like a hospital after trauma where no one dares raise their voice. My office became a rotating door of quiet confessions. Anonymous leads, department heads, whispering apologies, mid-level managers, offering quiet files they'd accidentally saved. No heroes. Just people finally realizing they had something to lose if they stayed silent. We started with procurement. Rhea traced 3 years' worth of vendor relationships that Theo had approved directly, skipping legal review. Fake agencies, duplicate billing, shell companies that didn't exist beyond a website, an invoice, and a P.O. box in Delaware. When we cross-referenced employee referrals, the picture got worse. Evelyn's department had flagged 2 of those vendors before flagged then buried. Someone had deleted the report trail from the internal system, but not from backups. Isaac had archived the server a year ago on a hunch, and hunches we were learning were more reliable than entire compliance teams. Meanwhile, Claire was peeling back the PR layers. The curated image Zenith Quant sold to the public wasn't just glossy, it was fraudulent. Partnerships that didn't exist. Sustainability campaigns never launched. Tech initiatives that were nothing more than buzzwords stacked on slide decks. She found emails where external journalists were offered sponsorships in exchange for favorable coverage. 2 had accepted. 1 was now on the verge of promotion at a major business outlet. Claire didn't even blink. She drafted a list, not of journalists to blacklist, of names to watch. Because media manipulation wasn't just bad press, it was tactical erasure of truth. Mila, meanwhile, was a force of nature. She sat across from Zenith's internal legal team in 4-hour sessions and dismantled every excuse they threw at her. Negligence is not protection, she said once, when someone claimed they didn't know Theo was forging executive signatures. It's complicity by design. Nobody argued. We ran these audits quietly, without press, without leaks, without flair. Not because we were afraid, but because we weren't here to perform justice. We were here to administer it, but justice never comes clean. Because the deeper we dug, the more we disturbed something older, something stubborn. On Wednesday morning, an email appeared in my inbox. No sender name, no subject, Just a sentence. You may have replaced him in the office, but not in the chain. Attached was a PDF, contracts I'd never seen dated 6 months before Theo's exit. International partnerships, shadow equity deals with offshore firms. 2 signatures stood out, Theo's of course, and someone named Dominic Stroud. I didn't recognize the name, neither did Mila. Ria found him an hour later, buried in the archives. He was Theo's independent consultant for crisis modeling 3 years ago. Worked remotely, never showed up for town halls, never onboarded officially. But he had access to Zenith's simulation frameworks, budget modeling tools, forecast algorithms. We dug deeper. Dominic Stroud wasn't an employee. He was the architect of Nexus 4, which meant Theo wasn't working alone. There had always been someone else pulling strings in the shadows, and that someone still hadn't surfaced. We ran his name through external compliance registries. Nothing. No LinkedIn, no active license, no legal filings. But his email, stroud.dd.vaultsync.org, pinged an address cease on a list Mila recognized. She looked at me across the table. That's an anonymized relay from a European dark finance server. You're not dealing with a contractor. You're dealing with a fixer. So the question became clear if Theo was gone, and Dominic was still silent. What had they planned that hadn't been exposed? That night, Isaac found something. While restoring the backups from Theo's old drive, he unearthed a folder misnamed Q4 Roadmap. Inside were audio files, dozens of them, recorded calls. Theo speaking to Dominic in clipped, calculated tones. In one, Theo says Elise is smarter than she looks. If she ever turns, burn the bridge. Frame her as a disgruntled ex. Leverage Claire if needed. She's soft. In another, if the board smells too much stall with restructuring jargon, we can clean up once the stock bounces. And the last one chilled me. Dominic's voice, cold, accentless. If Navarro makes it to the boardroom, we don't contain her. We eliminate her credibility. The system breaks if people believe her. We sat in silence. No one spoke for a full minute. Mila finally leaned forward. You need to get ahead of this. I already am, I said quietly. Because that same night I made a call I never thought I would. To Jordan Slate, senior investigative reporter for The Ledger. We hadn't spoken since the first data drop a week after I'd been fired. Back then, I told him not to publish. Told him it would compromise the investigation. But now we weren't in cleanup mode. We were in exposure mode. I met him at a private rooftop downtown, far from cameras, far from microphones. He looked older, or maybe just more careful. This it, he asked as I handed him the drive. Not yet, I said, but it's the part the public needs to see, and soon. He looked at me carefully. You're not afraid of what comes next. I'm afraid of what stays the same if I do nothing. He nodded. And that was it. No fanfare, no dramatic handshakes. Just truth passed like a torch. By Friday morning, whispers had turned into questions. Anonymous tips started trickling to journalists. Shareholders started making calls. Naomi emailed me a single line, I trust your timing. Let it burn clean. But I knew this wasn't the fire. This was the warning shot. Because Theo may have left, but his shadow hadn't. And Dominic Stroud. He hadn't even blinked yet. It started like any ordinary Monday. But by 9:47 a.m., Zenith Quant was no longer the company it had been for the last decade. The news broke in controlled waves, first through a discreet leak to the Ledger, then picked up by every major financial and tech outlet by noon. The article was precise, surgical, and most importantly, undeniable. Not just about Theo Langford, but about the deeper rot. The unregistered entities, the laundering network, the board's prior blind spots, the audio files, the silent war against truth from inside Zenith's own heart, and threaded throughout it all my name, Elise Navarro. Not framed as a whistleblower, but as the person who refused to stay invisible. Inside the building, it was like watching a dam finally break. Executives who'd spent months calculating survival suddenly remembered how to act accountable. Statements were drafted. Internal culture audits were launched. HR sent out a company-wide memo inviting employees to submit anonymous ethics reports. And yet, for all the scrambling, none of it mattered anymore. The real shift had already happened. Because the truth wasn't just revealed, it was believed. But the story wasn't over. At 2:03 p.m., I got a message from an unknown number. It was just a video file. No text, no subject. I hesitated, then hit play. Dominic Stroud appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a private study, dark wood shelves behind him. Books untouched, art too expensive to be personal. His face was calm, unreadable. "I assume you're watching this alone," he began. "If it's made it to you, then the board has acted and your story has reached daylight. Congratulations! But understand this, what you've exposed is one company's disease. What I protect is the system." He leaned forward. "Every organization has someone like me. Someone who understands that power can't be sanitized. It can only be managed. You were useful until you weren't. But now that you've lifted the veil, you'll find that truth has no safe harbor. Only waves. Good luck, Ms. Navarro." The video ended. No threat, no plea, just a reminder. Dominic wasn't just a ghost. He was a reflection of the deeper machine, the one that rewards silence and punishes clarity. I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the file. It wasn't a message for me. It was an epitaph for his relevance. Because what Dominic didn't understand and what Theo never saw is that legacy isn't built in corner offices or offshore accounts. It's built in the cracks, the ones they try to seal with money, with charm, with fear. And if you shine enough light into those cracks, the whole facade crumbles. That week, we finalized the transition plan. Naomi officially stepped down as chairwoman, citing a desire to reset the balance of influence. Erica declined her reappointment. Robert moved into a quiet advisor role. The board wasn't just rotating, it was changing shape. They asked me if I wanted the CEO seat. I said no. I didn't burn everything down just to sit on top of the ash pile. Instead, I proposed something else. A structural reimagining, shared governance, open audits, rotating leadership among departments, a standing ethics committee led by Mila, quarterly culture reviews conducted by employees, not HR. I called it the Pattern Reset Initiative. They said it was idealistic. I said idealism is just clarity with a spine. And to my surprise, they agreed. 6 months later, Zenith Quant looked nothing like it used to. We lost clients. We lost noise. But we gained something else, people who believed in what we were building. And not because they were told to, but because they saw it happening day by day. Rhea became head of operations. Claire led the new transparency division. Yes, we actually called it that. Isaac stayed where he thrived, but now had a team that listened. Mila started advising startups on ethical architecture, using Zenith as a model. Hassan trained a new generation of engineers on risk flags and quiet red lines. And me, I stayed, but not as a title, as a guide. I took a smaller office. I answered my own emails. I listened more than I spoke. And every Friday at 5 p.m., I walked the halls alone. Not to check on things, but to feel the pulse. To see if the walls remembered what it took to make them honest again. One evening, Claire found me standing by the old corner office, the one we'd sealed after Theo left. It was empty now. No desk, no echo. Just a view of the city skyline blurred by the reflection of glass that had seen too much. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come back?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "All the time. And then I stopped thinking about it. Because I did." She nodded quiet. We stood there a while longer, not saying much. Sometimes survival sounds like noise. Other times it's silence that roars. Later that night, I sat at my desk and opened the first document I'd written when this all began, the Reformation Blueprint. I added one final line. "Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals." Then I closed the file, for good. Because the story wasn't about revenge. It was about return. Not to the past, but to ourselves.